Welcome to the Fitness Secrets Show, where we talk everything training, nutrition, and mindset to help you get in the best shape of your life. Hey, I'm Sam, your host and online fitness coach. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about macronutrients, specifically what they are, why they're important, and then how we can balance them to achieve our fitness goals. So let's get started by talking about what exactly are macronutrients. Now, macronutrients are three different things: proteins, carbs, and fats. I'm sure you've heard of these three things before, but they're essentially the three main energy sources that are contained inside every single food that our body uses to survive. Now, if we take the example of a piece of bread has a certain amount of carbs, a certain amount of protein, and a certain amount of fat. Same way, a steak might have a certain amount of carbs, proteins, and fats. Now, the bread will have more carbs because it's a carbohydrate source, but the steak might have more protein, or a chicken breast might have more protein than carbs and fats because it's a protein source. Now, every food we eat is made up of some combination of these three macronutrients. Ignoring alcohol for the moment because that's a little bit of a different one. If we just think about food though, every food we eat is a combination of these three. Now, some things have all three, some things have two, and some things have just one. For example, a steak has pretty much no carbs in it. A little bit, but no carbs. An oil has just fat, so no protein and no carbs. But pretty much everything you eat will have some combination of the three. So let's take a look at each of the three individually and talk about their roles, their energy expenditure, and why they're important. So first of all, when we talk about protein, I think it's the best one to start with because when most people want to lose weight, they want to focus on a high protein diet. The macronutrient of protein has a couple different roles in the body. So the first one is muscle growth and repair. Now, when you go to the gym and you train, you lift weights, you put stress on the muscle, that creates micro tears in the muscle. Microscopic little tears, stuff that a microscope could see, not your naked eye could see. And it's only very small. But when you lift those weights, you create those micro tears. In order for your muscles to grow, your body has to refill in those holes with extra protein. Now, that comes from your dietary protein. If you think about if you were to eat a steak, that's the muscle from a cow. That's why a steak has such high protein, because it's pretty much muscle from a cow, right? Once you eat that protein, it gets absorbed into your body and your body uses it to build more muscle. So muscle function, growth, and repair is mainly determined or uses protein. It's also essential for things like hair, skin, nails, right? I'm not going to go into too much depth about that, but a high protein, high quality protein diet is important for those other things as well. So those are the two kind of essential roles of protein in the body. Now, I'm going to talk about here as well the energy value of each macronutrient, right? Every time you eat something, as we said, it's a combination of the three different macronutrients. Now, each of those macronutrients has a different energy value associated to it. Now, for protein, that is 4 calories per gram. Remember, calories is just a measure of energy. So 1 gram of protein, if you were to eat 1 gram of pure protein, that's 4 calories. Okay? 10 grams of pure protein would be 40 calories, right? Now, it's different for the other two, which we'll go into in a second. But that's important to note here that 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. So if you consume 200 grams of protein across the course of the day, that's 800 calories that you're ingesting, okay? Now, protein also has something called the thermic effect of food, same as the other two macronutrients, which is, for our purposes, simplified into the amount of energy your body uses to break down and actually use that macronutrient. So as soon as you eat a steak, it doesn't just go straight in and you can't use it for energy. It goes through a whole chemical process, which I won't go into here because it's not really relevant. But basically, your body uses about 20% of the energy, 20 to 30% of the energy from that protein you ingest to actually break down that protein and use it for energy. It's kind of a tricky definition to put out there, but if you think about it, like if I put in 100 calories of protein into the body, so if we put in 25 grams of protein, that's 100 calories, about 80 of those calories will actually go to our net energy expenditure overall. Okay, now when we're counting calories, counting macros, we want to count it at the mouth. So when we eat something, that's when we track it, right? But that's why we want to focus on high protein diets for weight loss, because for protein, only 80% of those calories are actually used for energy. Okay, that's something important to note here. So what are the best sources for protein? Well, in my opinion, I'm putting eggs at number one. Specifically, egg whites are incredibly high protein, but I think you should also consume the yolks because they contain so many unbelievable nutrients. So eggs is one of the best ones. Lean red meats, chicken, beef, pork, lamb, all that kind of stuff. Any lean cuts of meat are going to be the best sources, in my opinion, for protein. Now, if you're not eating meat, there's a couple other options too. Whey protein is a fantastic one. If you're on the go, if you're in a pinch, some whey protein powder mixed with a bit of water or a bit of milk can be a great way to go. Or things like fish too are other great ways. Now, if you want to talk about some plant-based options, you have things like beans and legumes have a bit. Nuts also have some protein, but again, mostly you want to be sticking towards lean cuts of meat. Eggs and fish are going to be your go-to sources when building protein into your diet. Okay, so that's pretty much all we need to know for protein. The next one is going to be carbs. Okay, so carbs, as we talked about bread before, you probably are aware of most of the good carbohydrate sources, which we'll talk about in a second. But carbs are essentially your body's preferred energy source. So if you were to eat a burger, for example, your body is going to use those carbohydrates as energy first. They're your preferred energy source from your body. Now, you can live without carbs. They're not essential for you to survive. That's what a ketogenic diet is, right? Ketogenic diet is limiting carbs to the extreme. Your body doesn't have to use carbs, but it is your preferred energy source. And there are a few benefits to eating carbs, in my opinion. First off is the glycogen stores in your muscle, which basically means the energy stored in your muscle. If you're doing really intense workouts, you're doing cardio, you're lifting weights heavily, then it's important to have some level of carbohydrates in the diet. I don't recommend cutting it out. You can if you want to. If that's what you can stick to long term, cutting out carbs for keto, then that's great. That's exactly what you should do. But in my opinion, having carbs in the diet is really important. The next thing too is fiber. So fiber has so many amazing benefits. I could probably even do a whole nother episode on fiber alone. But fiber comes from pretty much carbohydrate sources. So fruits, vegetables, starches, things like that, which have fiber, which is an incredible nutrient for you to stay alive and maintain great health, comes from carbohydrate sources. So that's the other reason why I kind of think you should keep carbs in the diet. Now, when we talk about the energy for carbs, we've got same as protein, 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate. So again, 1 gram of pure carbohydrate that you ingest is 4 calories, okay? 10 grams of carbs, 40 calories. Now, the thermic effect of food, as we talked about with protein, exists too for carbs. It's around 5 to 10%. Okay, so the energy your body uses to break down those carbs and use it for energy is around 5 to 10%, a lot less than protein. Okay. The best sources of carbs, in my opinion, are fruits, vegetables, rice, breads, and pastas. Okay, so your classic carbohydrate sources like breads, rice, and pastas are great. If you want to include them, they can be a fantastic part of a healthy, balanced diet. But things like fruits and vegetables are actually carbohydrate sources too, which most people don't realize. Fruits and vegetables are probably your main go-to carbohydrate source, in my opinion. If you want to include carbs, include fruits, include vegetables. It's one of the best ways to go. So now let's talk about fats. Fats are incredibly important in a balanced diet. When we talk about weight loss, we want to have a bit of a lower fat diet. Now, we don't want to completely eliminate fat from the diet, but we want to lower fat because it has a bit of a higher energy. But first, let's talk about the essential roles of fat. Number one is hormone regulation and production. Okay, so fat is essential for pretty much all the hormones that keep you alive. Your testosterone, estrogen, even your hunger signaling hormones, a whole bunch of different hormones across the body. Fat is essential for the production and maintaining of those hormones. Now, the second bit of that too is vitamin absorption. So most vitamins are fat soluble, so they get absorbed into fat. I think it's important just to keep in mind to keep those fats in because there are so many amazing benefits. The other one is brain function too. Now, your brain is made up a lot of fatty tissue. You need to keep fats in the diet in order to survive. If you completely eliminated fat from your entire diet, chances are you would not survive. Okay, you need fat. It is an essential part of the diet. Now, when we look at the energy for fat, fat is higher than carbs and proteins. Fat sits at 9 calories per gram. So when 4 calories per gram for protein and 4 calories per gram for carbs, that is 9 calories per gram for fats. So if you consumed 1 gram of pure fat, that's 9 calories. Okay, 10 grams of fat, that's 90 calories. And its thermic effect of food is around 0 to 3%. So it doesn't require much energy, if any, to break down those fats and use it for energy. That's why we kind of want to reduce the fat intake in those diets because number one, it has that higher caloric value. So if you have a teaspoon of olive oil, that can add easily 50, 60, 70 calories to your meal, okay? If you include butter, cutting out the butter can save you a whole bunch of calories, right? Cutting the fat off the meat that you eat can save you a whole bunch of calories. So it's important to not take it out completely, but try and reduce it. But there are some good sources you want to still include. Egg yolks, again, I said eggs before, one of the best foods out there. Fatty fish, nuts, seeds, avocado, and full-fat dairy are going to be the list of things that I recommend you include in the diet to get your essential fat intake. Now, let's talk about how to balance these macronutrients. Now that we've kind of discussed all of them, let's talk about how we should balance them for fat loss, okay? For fat loss, we want to balance our macronutrients 40% protein, 40% carbs, and 20% fat. What does that mean? It means that every single day, the food that you eat should be made up of 40% protein, 40% carbs, 40% fat. Now, if you're tracking your food on an app like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer, this is incredibly easy to do. But if you're not, first of all, I recommend you should. But if you're not, it's going to be pretty hard to do because you're going to have to look up every food and write it down. So use one of those apps and stick to 40% carbs, 40% protein, 20% fat. It's an easy guide to start with that's going to help you get those balance of the essential fats, but also cover mostly protein and carbs, which have that lower caloric value and that higher thermic effect of food for weight loss. So include a protein source with every meal, a carbohydrate source, and a good fat source out of those ones I talked about. And that should be your split for weight loss. 40% carbs, 40% protein, 20% fat. An app like MyFitnessPal, Chronometer to track it and follow that every day as close to you again. You're not going to get it perfect every day. You're never going to hit 40, 40, 20 exactly. It might be 45, 35, 15, right? Or 10, whatever the percentage is there, right? But the important thing is that you try and stick to those percentages as close as possible in order for fat loss, okay? So I'm going to finish out this episode here. Thanks so much for watching. That has been Macronutrients Explained, and I will see you in the next one.